Hey guys, we're going to talk about chords. Technically speaking, a chord is any two or more notes sounding simultaneously, but generally when we say chords, we mean a series of notes stacked in thirds, either major or minor. The most basic type of chord you'll see is a triad, which as the name suggests has three notes. You can look at this as one third on top of another. So let's say we start on D. We can go up a major third to F sharp, then we can go up, say, a minor third to A. The way a triad sounds depends on what type of thirds you use and where. So, for instance, if you go up a major third then a minor third, it'll sound different than going up a minor third then a major third. There are four basic types of triads. The major triad starts with a root, goes up a major third, then a minor third, whereas the minor triad does the opposite, going up a minor third, then a major third. One thing you'll notice about these two is that, in both cases, the top note is a perfect fifth above the root. That gives the chord a sense of consonance and stability. The other two types of triads feel much more off balance and harsh because they don't have that perfect fifth. As a side note, we often refer to the intervals not as stacks of thirds, but as the intervals from the root. We'll even omit the words major and perfect to save time. So when you see an interval described as a third, it means a major third. So a major triad has a root, a third, and a fifth, while a minor triad has a root, a flat third, and a fifth. Back to triads, if you stack two major thirds on top of each other, you wind up with what's called an augmented triad, which has a root, third, and sharp 5. The last type, if you stack two minor thirds, gives you a diminished triad with a root, a flat third, and a flat fifth or tritone. Of course, we don't have to stop at triads. We can keep stacking thirds. If we add another above the fifth, we get what's called a seventh chord because the added note is some kind of seventh above the root of the chord. There are a lot of types of seventh chords that you'll encounter, but we're going to focus on the five most common ones right now. Those are the major seventh chord, which is a major triad with a major seventh, the minor seventh chord, which as you might guess is a minor triad with a minor seventh, the dominant seventh, which is a major triad with a minor seventh, the minor 7 flat 5, which is a diminished triad with a minor seventh, and the diminished seventh, which is a diminished triad with what we call a diminished seventh, which is a double flatted seventh and harmonic to a major sixth. Across musical history and cultures, we've created many different symbols to represent these same chords. For clarity and consistency, these are the ones we're going to use. But so you're prepared if you encounter them, here are some other common chord symbols that mean the same thing. Most of the time, the chords you use are derived from the key you're in. So for instance, if we're playing in C major, we wouldn't play a C minor triad because the E flat isn't diatonic. If you start on C and go up diatonic thirds, you'll find, unsurprisingly, you have a C major triad. Likewise through the scale, we have D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. You'll notice that there are no augmented triads. Those don't occur in normal scales. We also often find it useful to refer to a chord's position in the key rather than its actual name. For that, we use what's called Roman numeral analysis, where we represent each chord with a Roman numeral for the scale of its root. So in major, we have 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, and 7 diminished. In minor, we have 1 minor, 2 diminished, flat 3 major, 4 minor, 5 minor, flat 6 major, and flat 7 major. This allows us to talk about chord functions more generally without referencing a specific key, and we'll be doing this a lot. Oh, one last thing. Be careful not to assume that the lowest note in a chord is its root. One thing that you'll encounter is something called chord inversions, which are similar to interval inversions, in that you're taking the bottom notes and bringing them up an octave. It changes the sound of the chord but won't change its function. When a chord has its root as its lowest note, that's called root position. When the third is the lowest, we call that first inversion. Fifth on the bottom is second inversion, and if you're following the pattern, then seventh on the bottom is of course third inversion. Well, that's it for chords. Looks like we've covered everything you need to get started. If you've still got questions about any of these, don't hesitate to ask in the comments, by email, or on Facebook or Twitter. And no matter what, keep on rockin'.